So when I was looking for extra people to fill out the teams, I hit up my project management class, and Sean said he couldn't do it because he's already actually hiked Everest, and he's done this simulation before. But so that you could do it again and still not do that great, or you could do it wonderfully. But anyway, I thought we've normally have had a mountaineer, and I've had brought somebody in from Battle Creek who's hiked climbed Killy, I should say, and also climbed Rainier successfully on his third try. The weather was kind enough, and they were able to summit. And of course, you have the mountaineer there in the Harvard materials. But now we'll give Sean. Sean's got a short briefing for us on before we go climbing up Everest. So, Sean, why don't you tell us about your experience, please?
Okay. Hi, everybody. So I figured since you guys are starting off at base camp, kind of reinforce how hard the climb will be. I'll talk about the kind of journey and how much work you had to get just to get to where you're going to start off from today. So let me minimize this. Get that out of the way. Okay. So yeah, hi everybody. My name's Sean Derrick, PhD student with the department. And in 2014, it took me a total of 3 weeks to go from Michigan to Nepal to base camp, and then essentially reverse the entire process. So we're just gonna go through the trek I took, and like I said, the ending of my journey is pretty much where your journey would start off from today. So the first step in the process is to get from Michigan, where you're sitting, to Nepal. Oh, sorry, I'm just getting a lot of feedback from somebody. Okay, thank you. So currently, I'm going to keep calling out the elevations because elevation is one of the biggest things that makes this trek difficult. Right now, where you're sitting somewhere between 500 and 1,600 feet above sea level. And that number is about to go north very quickly. So to get to Nepal, Michigan is about on the opposite side of the planet from Nepal as you can get. So going either east or west is roughly the same time. The only difference is the Pacific Ocean is the majority of your trip if you go west. The trip I did, I went east. So first I left Michigan, ended up going out to Abu Dhabi, and then from there hopped a plane from Abu Dhabi to Nepal. So where you arrive in Nepal is Kathmandu. Kathmandu, you've just jumped up to about 4,500 feet above sea level, which right now isn't that much. You'll after taking about a 20-hour combined flight and travel day, you tend to take a day or two just in the city, get to explore. It's a really fun city to be around, very interesting if you've never been to that side of the world. It's a bit of a culture shock, but yeah, I highly encourage it for anyone that wants to go out that way. So next thing you have to do is you have to get to the trailhead because you can't directly go to Everest Base Camp. The altitude is so bad, you'll get altitude sickness if you go from Kathmandu to base camp and stay there longer than about 2 or 3 hours. So the two ways to get to the trailhead in order to hike to base camp, you can either take a bus ride that lasts somewhere between 24 and 36 hours with various stops over very rough terrain, or you can fly. The flight itself is only about 20 minutes, but you end up flying into what is regarded as one of the most dangerous airports in the world. And that's called the Lukla Airport. And that's the very first stop along the trip. Is you started here in Kathmandu, and you do that little 20-minute hop to Lukla. And this is the trek map for the next few days of your trip. The trip itself, you're going to fly into Lukla, which is at 9,000 feet above sea level. To kind of give you a perspective of that, Denver, the mile-high city, is well below where you're at currently. From Lukla, to go from Lukla to base camp at the end of the trail is only about 40 linear miles, but it's going to take you 8 days because of the amount of time you have to stop for acclimatization and the sheer amount of elevation gain and loss that you go through the trek. So I'm not sure if this is, oh yeah, it is going to play. So this is the Lukla Airport, and this is the one I said is regarded as one of the most dangerous airports in the world. The reason why it's one of the most dangerous airports in the world is it's literally cut into a mountainside. If you notice from right about here, the airport runway is sloped downwards, and then you might notice there's nothing at the end. It's an entire cliff edge that drops off about 200 or 300 feet, So on takeoff, you come to the very end of the airport and you Indiana Jones it down over the edge. And then sometimes you'll see they don't have enough speed to them or they're overloaded and you'll see them come on off and drop down quite a bit. And then the other reason why this is a very dangerous airport is I am standing on the end of the airport. It's a giant brick wall. It was cut into the mountainside itself. So if an airplane is coming in too fast or isn't lined up right, they really can't pull out of it. So you end up wily coyoting into the side of the mountain. Ooh. So that's your initial arrival. Usually, when you land in Lukla, you'll start the beginning of your hike for day one. So it doesn't matter if you arrive at 6 a.m. or if you arrive at 6 p.m. The first day is pretty much the same. You're going to take about a 4 to 6 hour day hike to a little town called Phak Ding. Uh, it's about uh, yeah, it's roughly about a 4 to 6 hour hike. You actually go downhill as far as altitude, so it's probably one of your easiest days unless you're afraid of heights. Most of it, you're going between mountain ranges and big valleys, so you tend to cross very steep bridges that are very high in the air. Kind of give you a sense of how high in the air this one is. This is an identical bridge directly below it. So it's about 100-foot drop down to this bridge, which is still another 100 or so feet down into where the river is. And you have to cross about 10 of these. That also give you a sense of scale. That's a full-size pine tree between the two. So you got to cross several of those on your first day. Okay. From there, from Phak Ding, you go to a town called Namche Bazaar. This is probably the hardest day of the hike because you really aren't acclimatized at this point, and uh, it's rather rough. It's mainly stairs. And sorry, I've got a couple people trying to talk to me in the background. I'm not exactly sure how to answer them, but I'm going to crack on. Okay, so this is Namche Bazaar. Uh, you might have heard the term Sherpa. Sherpa is an ethnic group that comes from the mountains, and Namche is their capital city, and it's cut into the center of a mountainside. So it's this big cul-de-sac that's vertical up the entire mountain. It's full of stores, nice hotels, a lot of restaurants and bars. You spend a full extra day here acclimatizing. So once you get here, you're going to spend another day hiking around the city itself, exploring and just getting used to being at that altitude. Okay, from Namche, you're going to go to the next stop, which is Tengbuche. Sometimes you go a little bit past, but most people stay at Tengbuche, uh, mainly because there's a very famous monastery up at the top. It's right at the peak of a mountain, so you at least reach one summit along the way, and you gain an extra 1,400 feet along this section of the hike. And this is kind of the peak you end up going into. This is a hotel. Uh, the monastery is directly behind me. It was obscured at the time. Uh, it gets very cold because you are right nestled up against the mountains, and you get to see quite a few snow landslides as you go. So from Tangbuche, your next day, you're going to go to a small town called Farishay. Now, up until this point, you've been walking through woods, your typical kind of mountainy terrain. But at this point, this is when you're at an altitude that's so high, it becomes almost like a lunar landscape. So right now, we're at about 1,300 square feet. And yeah, the air is getting pretty thin. The hike between Tengbuche and Farishay, it takes about 6 or 8 hours, and you're pretty worn out by the end of it. And this is Farishay. You're going to spend an extra day here acclimatizing. So again, doing day hikes up some of these peaks. You might summit one or two of them if you're up for it. But essentially a practice day and a relaxation day. And at this point, when you're staying here, you're now taller than most of the tallest peaks in the Rocky Mountain range, just to kind of give you a sense of scale. Okay. From Farishay, you're going to go to Labouche is the next stop. And from there, you're going to gain 2,200 square feet. It is uh, not a very long vertical distance, but it's almost entirely uphill. And it takes you a very long day. So you get a really early start on it and you go for a full day. And because of the altitude change, you're adding 2,200 feet. You spend another full day acclimatizing once you get into town. And this is what the town looks like. Okay. From there, you go to Gorgashep, which is going to be your last stop before getting to base camp. This is a relatively easy, flat terrain, flattish, given the rest of the trail. It takes about 6 to 8 hours, and then Gorgashep kind of acts as your base camp for the next day and a half, assuming you're going to base camp and back and you're not staying to climb the mountain. So from Gorgashep, if you're just going to base camp, you do it as a day hike. You go out and come back. But in your guys' case, if you're summiting Everest, you go there and you end up living there for the next 2 to 3 months. So once you get to Everest Base Camp, you're taller than all but 2 mountains in the U.S. That includes all of the Rockies, maybe 1 or 2 in Central America as well. So you are extremely high in elevation. And keep that in mind because you still have about 11,000 feet, vertical feet to go. And to kind of give you an idea of the scale of the mountain, so that's me. That is me just outside of Namche Bazaar, the Sherpa capital, with my Sherpa guide Lakpa. That's Everest in the background, and that's still 7 days away. This mountain here in the foreground is about a day and a half away. So it's just about walking around to here, and you are right alongside this mountain, and that Everest is that much farther away, and that's how much bigger it is relative to the other mountains around you.
That's truly amazing, Sean. Thanks so much for your time. That was a wonderful start to our experience tonight. And a lot of virtual applause for Sean. Appreciate it so much.
Yep, and it doesn't matter if you're just trekking or going, like actually climbing Everest. Everybody from Sir Edmund Hillary to anyone that's summited in the last 2 to 3 years has to go through that exact same trek. So you pretty much just kind of went through exactly what everyone has to do to get there.
What a great briefing and great photos you were able to share with us too. So
okay, well,
all right, thanks so much.
Yeah, have a good evening and good luck on the trip, guys.
Thank you.